Hello everybody, this is Shockfactor22. Now is something that I've really wanted to somewhat talk about. Um, as many of you people remember the Titanic sinking, one of the, well, not really one of the, but the biggest and most famous shipwreck in history. Today, basically, I'm going to explain how, just for the people who don't understand, how the ship had broke and how it had actually sank, because people just thought, oh, it hit an iceberg and it split in half and it sank, big deal. Well, here's what happened. On the night of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic was steaming through clear waters. There was no moon, and that'll become a crucial point as I'm discussing this. As the Titanic is steaming along, there's a big black shadow in the way, but there's no way to know what it is because there was no moon and the oceans were completely calm. It wasn't until they had gotten to 200 feet to where they had realized, oh my god, it's an iceberg. So now the lookouts announced to Captain Lightoller, well, Second Officer Lightoller, iceberg dead ahead. And he tells the crew, hard to starboard, full speed to stern, which basically means turn left and turn the engines backwards. Now here was a flaw. The Titanic was designed like a V. Its front, its bow. Basically making it where if it had hit anything, it would have split the object in two. But what happened was they had forgotten. If the Titanic had hit the ice head on, only two compartments would have been flooded and everybody would have been fine. But the ship had turned and thus struck the iceberg on the starboard side. Now the ship was also designed where if it had hit, excuse me, it was designed where if it did hit something, the ship was strong enough to where it could have 4 compartments full of water and the ship would be fine. But the iceberg had cut open 5, which meant that the Titanic was basically doomed. So what happens is that they're starting to shut down the boiler rooms and they're starting to clear people out. The thing they had forgotten was basically, I wish I had an example for you guys, but basically the water was starting to pour over into the next compartment. There was enough room at the top to where the water could go over into the next compartment and into the next compartment and into the next compartment and so on and so forth. So now people are starting to clear out. The third class decks are the bottom, so they had to get out the fastest because they had sent that, well, basically they heard the ship hit the iceberg. Basically, as the ship is now beginning to list and beginning to sink, people are starting to get onto the lifeboats. Now, one of the things that they had forgotten was that there was a lack of lifeboats. There wasn't enough for every single person. So that's why the women and children first was called, so that the women and children can get on board, and if there were any left, the men would be lowered down last. Now, as the ship is starting to sink, the crew is starting to fire off flares. Now, what's basically going on is that a ship a mile out called Californian, who could have went to Titanic's rescue and saved every single person on board. The captain had thought, they must be having a party or something. Shut the Morse code machine off and went to sleep. So now the Californian can't help because they've gone dark. The Olympic and the Californian are responding, but they're too far out to get the people on their ships before Titanic sinks. Sorry about that. One of my pets must have dropped a ball or something. Anyway, the ship is now really beginning to take on water. The port side compartments are now starting to flood. The ship is now starting to actually sink. Some of the lifeboats have been lowered down. They've been released and everything like that. Now the ship is starting to go under. Now the ship is about 3/4 underwater before about 9,000 pounds or so of torque rips the ship in two. And now the bow is taking the stern under because the rail, the bottom of the hull, is holding it in place. Finally, it cannot take any more and breaks. The bow now starts to sink violently to the bottom of the ocean. An air pocket gets underneath the bow, which somewhat levels it. And finally, it smashes the seafloor very violently. A shockwave was actually created from the Titanic hitting the ocean floor, which was about a 200 200-mile shockwave. So now the stern has actually leveled itself. It's now sitting level again, but then the water starts to bowl over again, and it lists and lists and finally goes under. Now the stern is not as lucky as the bow, because due to the bow being so streamlined, it cut through the water like butter, like a hot knife through butter. But now the stern, which is now going down, the part where the Titanic broke in two, is going down first. So now this big lump of metal now, this big hump of iron and metal, is ripping and shredding violently. Like, it's shredding to pieces. And then finally it hits the ocean floor, stern the torn part down, and then rolls back onto its right side up, basically. Now, I'm trying to remember how many people were on board Titanic at the time of the sinking. I'm trying to remember. Titanic. And I actually tried using Google Earth to find the wreckage, because apparently I can do that. But, yeah. Trying to find out where it is. Oh, the keel, that's what the bottom part is. Yeah. Factors, blah, blah, blah. Damn. I believe there was like 2,000 people on board and about, let me see. Yeah, resulting in the deaths of 1,517 people, with another 712, 721. In the comments, let me know. It was, and the reason why I'm making this video is because it's it's not nearly, but it's 3 months away, is the 100th year commemoration of the sinking of the RMS Titanic. So far we've had, I believe it was last year, I'll read it here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, at 12:13 p.m. on the 31st of May 2011, exactly 100 years after Titanic rolled down her slipway, a single flare was fired over Belfast's docklands in commemoration. All boats in the area around the Holland and Wolff shipyard then sounded their horns, and the assembled crowd applauded for exactly 62 seconds, the time it had originally taken for the liner to roll down the slipland in 1911. On the 6th of April this year, the 100th anniversary of Titanic's main voyage will be celebrated by re-releasing the 1997 James Cameron film Titanic in 3 dimensions. ITV1 have produced a 4-part Titanic miniseries to be broadcasted in early 2012. The miniseries is written by Oscar winner Julian Fellowes. This ship will be, this year will mark the anniversary of the legendary sinking. And, to all the people who did die on that night, may you all rest in peace, and may all the survivors, because every single survivor is now gone, may all of them rest in peace. The Titanic was such a major disaster for its time, and it still somewhat is. To think that a ship that was deemed unsinkable, undestroyable, undamageable, can now be, a part of history. And that's what made this history, was this very accident and this very fate. And I thank James Cameron for basing the movie Titanic on a real story. And the Asylum, I say, you can all go fuck yourselves, because that was so disrespectful, making that Titanic 2 film. That was so disrespectful to the people that died that day. It's such, and again, it's such a sad tragedy to think that such a ship that was almost 900 feet long, that was deemed unsinkable on its very first voyage, sank to the bottom of the sea. And for 73 years we couldn't find it. And also there was a film in 1980 called Raise the Titanic, which was basically the ship was pulled from the bottom of the ocean, connecting to a bunch of ships. And basically people had thought, oh, the ship is still in one piece, that it never broke, that never shredded to pieces, that it's still in one piece. And those breathtaking photos of what happened that day, the photos of the ship now are very breathtaking. To think that such a ship that was magnificent and beautiful could become nothing but a steaming to a burning, cold lump of metal. And I'm sorry if I'm, making this sound kind of emotional, guys. It's just this disaster was a very, very bad time for everyone, because the United States had actually made a specific shipyard for Titanic. It was actually designed for when Titanic ended up in New York. It wouldn't end up on one of the regular platforms that the other cross-continental ships would take. It was its own place where Titanic would sit. And to this day, it's never been used. They haven't even taken it apart. It's still sitting there. Almost like expecting that one day the Titanic would be there. Which it actually, which it kind of did in Ghostbusters 2, but then again, that was 1989, I think it was that film. But, again, it's such a sorrowful tale to think that such a ship of magnificence, of beauty, never made it to its second voyage. It never made it. Anyway, guys, this is Shockfactor22, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Peace.